All right. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Apex Town Council meeting. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for April the 2nd, 2019. Please join me for a moment of silence as we thank those who have served to defend us, as we ask for guidance and wisdom, and as we remember those who have gone on before us. Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. We have a good group, and we have all our council members here. Hopefully you got a chance to get the copy of the agenda out on the podium. It is the stapled white pieces of paper. If you missed one, feel free to run out and grab one now. I don't mind. Nobody here minds if you run out and do that. Also, if you intend to speak at either the public forum or one of the public hearings tonight, you do need to make sure you're signed up on the appropriate sheet on this ledge. The town clerk will be bringing those sheets to me in just a couple of minutes. So if you did not put your name there but you wish to speak tonight, you need to go do that right now. Lastly, if you intend to speak, there is a yellow sheet on the podium out there that describes the guidelines for speaking at a public meeting. If you are unfamiliar with them, I encourage you please to go get a copy now and familiarize yourself over the next few minutes. We now move into the presentation. It is not on the printed agenda, but this is a new ad, so I wanted to do that. As you can see, we have some of the posts here from the Apex American Legion, and so with that, is Mr. Sayers receiving? Mr. Sayers, if you want to come on up. I have a proclamation here that I'd like to read and bring down to you. Come on up for your group. Whereas the American Legion was formed March 15th through 17th, 1919, as a national organization at the end of World War I dedicated to veterans, current service members, their families, the youth of America, and ordinary citizens. And whereas the American Legion was formally chartered by the U.S. Congress in 1919 and signed by President Woodrow Wilson with a commitment to four key pillars that still stand today: veteran affairs and rehabilitation, national security, Americanism, and children and youth. And whereas in 1923 the American Legion conducted a nationwide survey to ascertain how WW1 veterans were readjusting to civilian life, the public outcry was loud and clear, resulting in the creation of the Veterans Administration. Today, that agency has grown to become the Department of Veteran Affairs. And whereas the American Legion's founders envisioned a future of honor, respect, and prosperity for military veterans and the nation they vowed to protect and defend, that vision brought into existence into the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, known as the GI Bill. The American Legion is recognized as the organization that wrote and created the bill, which ushered in monumental changes in U.S. society. And whereas, still serving today, the American Legion believes in the vision of its founders, a strong America, freedom and opportunity, the American Legion firmly believes that the veterans and their families have earned every benefit awarded to them by a grateful nation because of their selfless service. Indeed, this basic principle was succinctly written into law when the Supreme Court stated in 1983, "It is not irrational for Congress to decide that even though it will not subsidize substantial lobbying by charities generally, it will subsidize lobbying by veteran organizations. Veterans have been obliged to drop their own affairs and take up the burdens of their nation, subjecting themselves to the mental and physical hazards as well as the economic and family detriments which are peculiar to the military service and which do not exist in normal civil life. Our country has a long-standing policy of compensating veterans for their past contributions by providing them numerous advantages. This policy has always been deemed to be legitimate. And whereas this year the American Legion celebrates 100 years of service and still believes in the four pillars upon which it was founded. Now, therefore, I, Lance Olive, Mayor of the Town of Apex, do hereby proclaim the year 2019 as American Legion Year in Apex. And I've got the stamp here. I'd like to come down and present that to Mr. Sayers. And while I'm doing so, I'd like for our post members to please stand so that we can thank you together. And with that, I'd like to present this to Mr. Sayers here. There you go. Anything you'd like to say, you can use that microphone right there.
I have a little infomercial here, if we can get, how to get it up here. Let's go ahead and play it there if you would.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Emma.
We are the captains of Apex High School Girls Varsity Softball.
In 1919, the American Legion was formed to serve and support our veterans returning from wars and defending our freedoms. This year, the American Legion is celebrating 100 years of service in our communities.
Our team's mission is to assist Apex Post 124 in a fundraising event for several Apex community projects.
Over the next few months, our team and American Legion members will be selling tickets for an opportunity to win lots of great prizes.
We will be selling tickets all around the Apex area, so buy a ticket and help a veteran. And when you see a veteran, be sure to say thank you for your service.
And don't miss out on the Legion's Car and Truck Show, Saturday, May 11th at the Apex Town Campus parking lot.
Happy birthday, American Legion! We are Apex!
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Sorry we couldn't get the audio in there, but I'm sure we'll get that worked on for the future. All right, so now at this time we'll move into the time of consent agenda. Consent agenda is the opportunity for us to enact several things at one time for efficiency's sake. As always, any council member, if they see something they wish to pull and discuss later in the meeting, they certainly can do so. Let me just ask real quickly, because we had a few things change. Are there any consent changes today, Mr. Town Manager?
No, sir.
Okay, so with that, I'll ask if there is a motion for. All right, we have a motion for approval and a second. Discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. Now we're at the time where we set our regular meeting agenda. At this time, I have some information. There are some additional items, so if you'll bear with us, let's see if we can work through those. We've done the presentation, so that doesn't really need to be added on. I understand, Councilman Jensen, you have an item, and that is related to environmental boards. So if that is acceptable, can we make that new business number 2?
That will work.
If there's no objection from council. All right, is there anything else? Oh, I think, was there a legal matter? Or, no, that's already printed on the agenda. Okay.
So I have one, Mayor.
Okay.
So I'd like to have a new business item added to discuss how we handle requests for assistance. So there are groups, organizations, businesses who would like to support people in this town. So I think we should have a conversation about how to handle that in an open and transparent way.
How we handle.
Sort of requests for human services, human supports, human resources
Okay.
for people.
All right. I'll
Not the festivals related thing, right?
go to you.
Funding request or support requested from the town
All right, I'll go to you when we get to that point. If there's no objection, that'll be new business number 3. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
All right. Any other items? Okay, not hearing any. I'll call for approval of the agenda with those 2 modifications. Is there a motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, the agenda is set, and we now come to public forum. So at this time, while the town clerk is bringing up the public forum sheet, this is a time where we hear from you. We allocate a 3-minute time period for anyone who wants to share with your council anything that's on your mind. We do that in a cordial, informal way. If you have intentions to speak, again, I'll remind you about the guidelines that we will follow. I see 2 people have signed up on the public forum time, so I will open the public forum and call to the front Mr. John Buck, who will be followed by Jeff Hastings. As you're coming up, I'll just remind you, please state your name and address for the record, and then your 3 minutes will begin. Please make sure you can see the green, yellow, red light box there in front of you. Mr. Buck, you have the floor.
My name is John Buck. I live at 105 Lindenberry Drive in Apex, North Carolina. My purpose for being here today is to state my support for new business agenda item number 1, where you have a possible motion for approving a resolution so that the town of Apex will grant funds for affordable housing for an affordable housing project that you have recently approved here in Apex. And I look for your continuing support for that new business item. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Buck. We'll now move to the second person, Mr. Hastings.
Thank you, Mayor and Town Council. Jeff Hastings, 3609 Friendship Road, Apex. I come to you tonight representing Peak Fest and want to make everybody aware of one of the things that we do, and that is giving away grants. Over the last 10 years, we've given away approximately $30,000 to $35,000, $300,000 to $325,000 in grants to community organizations. That grant window is now open, and seeing as how y'all are up there and civically minded, if anybody knows of an organization, we try to base it in Apex or Apex area, that loosely affiliates families. The grant window is open between now and April 19th. ApexPeakFest.com is the easiest way to get to that. Those grants will be awarded on May 4th at noon at Peak Fest itself. So it's one of the true joys that I have being affiliated with Peak Fest, is being able to return back to the community that so richly helps us. So thank you very much.
And before you leave, since
sir.
you're the last person, do you recall how much you gave away in grants last year?
Last year we gave away $14,000
Okay, thank you.
and anticipate slightly more this year.
Great.
The sponsorship has been really good so far.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hastings.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that, I'll close the public forum, and we'll move to the next items, which, as I turn the page, I believe will be public hearings. So we now move to public hearings number 1 and 2. We'll hear them both at the same time. Just as a reminder, part of the reason, somebody say something? Oh, I thought I heard something. Okay. Maybe it was just a sound. I don't want to say something wrong, so. Public hearings number 1 and 2 we'll hear at the same time. As you know, we annex only what we really intend to rezone, and only upon request. Likewise, we cannot rezone until it's annexed. So we do both of those items either together or not at all. So we'll hear one public hearing for both number 1 and 2, and we'll have one motion for that as well. So at this time, this is a reminder, this is a continuation from the March 19th meeting, and presenting this tonight is Liz Lofton. Right? There you go. Good. Okay. Ms. Lofton.
Good evening. Okay, this is rezoning case 18CZ34 on New Hill Olive Chapel Road. So this rezoning is located in the southeastern or western portion of our jurisdiction. The proposal is on the eastern side of New Hill Olive Chapel Road. Jordan Manors is to the west, and Woodbury subdivision is to the south. The property is currently in Wake County's jurisdiction, and the properties to the north and east are zoned Wake County R40W, and the properties to the south and west are zoned Plan Unit Development Conditional Zoning. The applicant is proposing to rezone these properties to Plan Unit Development Conditional Zoning. The 2045 land use map identifies the proposed site as low-density residential, and the proposed PUD is consistent with this classification. As you may recall, this is one of the areas that was changed during the Advanced Apex process from medium density to low density residential. The site contains 7 single-family lots, accessory structures, and cemetery, which is located in this area. There are also a number of creeks, streams, buffers, and other environmentally sensitive areas. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on November 15th, 2018, and the neighborhood meeting report is attached in the staff report. The applicant has proposed a limited number of land uses, and a full list is on page 3 of the staff report. The applicant has removed townhome as one of the approved uses since the last meeting. The PUD proposes an overall maximum density of 2.7 units per acre, which is 153 dwelling units. The PUD will also provide a mix of residential types and has broken the PUD into 3 different sections. A full list of the dimensional standards is in the PUD text and staff report. The residential mix shall transition from smaller single-family lots to larger single-family lots, moving away from the central core. The first section, or central core, allows 40-foot wide single-family lots, and these lots shall not be located along New Hill Olive Chapel along the buffer. The second section allows a minimum of 50-foot wide lots, and the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. The third section allows a minimum of 65-foot wide lots and a minimum lot size of 6,500 square feet. The Olive Ridge PUD is south and west of Highway 540. Therefore, it requires a minimum of 25% RCA. The project is proposing mass grading, and an additional 2% is required. The PUD will provide 27% RCA. In addition, the applicant has agreed to add 1 additional tree for each lot within the development. The additional tree may be planted on the lot or within the HOA controlled area. The proposed PUD meets or exceeds the buffers required by the UDO, with the exception of the buffer along the southern property line. This is a 10-foot type B because of the Little Beaver Creek stream buffer and the 100-year floodplain. The applicant has increased the buffer along New Hill Olive Chapel Road to 50 to a 50-foot type B buffer.
Type B?
Type B. And a 20-foot type B buffer along the northern boundary, and a 10-foot type B buffer along the eastern property line. In addition, the applicant has also proposed a variable width buffer not to exceed 10 feet, starting here and going to the north. The road and pedestrian improvements proposed are consistent with the TIA and comply with the Apex Bike and Transportation Plan. The full list of improvements are located in the PUD text and staff report. The developer shall provide a 6-foot paved shoulder along New Hill Olive Chapel Road for the property frontage, a public right-of-way dedication of 55 feet from the roadway center line, and a 10-foot side path along the right-of-way pending U.S. Army Corps of Engineer approval. So a 10-foot side path along New Hill Olive Chapel. In addition, the developer has agreed to 2 other transportation-related conditions since the last meeting. No more than 100 residential building permits shall be issued prior to June of 2022, or the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of Old US 1 and New Hill Olive Chapel Road, whichever comes first. Also, the engineer and builder shall work with NCDOT and the Town of Apex Transportation staff to identify and implement additional curve warnings, which may include signage, pavement markings, vegetation removal, and other identifications. The PUD will provide town water, sewer, and electric services. The applicant has proposed a full list of standard architectural conditions with additional single-family conditions. A full list of the conditions can be found on page 6 of the staff report. To summarize the non-standard conditions, no more than 25% of the single-family residential units shall be permitted as zero entry and shall provide a first floor master bedroom. All single-family detached homes shall provide pre-configured for solar energy. 10 single-family homes shall have a minimum of 3 kilowatt solar PV system.
Could you stop there for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I believe the applicant changed that to 4 kilowatts. I guess he can speak to that.
I'm not aware of that change.
Oh. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
2 model homes shall have a solar PV system with 3 options the developer can choose from. A solar system shall be installed to serve the amenities. The lots with solar PV systems shall be identified on the final site plan plat, and all solar installation required by this condition shall be completed or under construction prior to 90% of building permits being issued. These are the elevations. As you may recall, Bike Apex shifted the location of the greenway that is shown on the Pergos plan to reduce environmental impacts and to provide a safer location for pedestrians to cross at New Hill Olive Chapel Road and continue along the greenway within Jordan Manors. The Parks and Rec Commission recommended a fee in lieu of dedication for their project at their January 30th, 2019 meeting. After this meeting, it was discovered that the Advisory Commission may have been under the impression that the Bike Apex plan called for a side path through the site, when in fact it calls for greenway. Based on this information, staff is recommending a modification to the fee in lieu recommendation wording by the Advisory Commission. The full wording of the staff recommendation is on page 8 of the staff report. To summarize, a 50% credit would be given for the portion that would be built to townside path standards, and a 100 credit would be for the remaining portion of the greenway. The applicant has also added a condition that the portion of Little Beaver Creek Greenway that is to be constructed to townside path standards shall be installed to avoid driveway crossings. Final routing of the greenway shall be coordinated with staff. Planning staff can recommend approval with the conditions as offered by the applicant. Approval of the rezoning is reasonable because the proposed plan unit development conditional zoning district is consistent with the low-density residential and zoning of adjacent properties. The proposed rezoning will also maintain the character and appearance of the area by providing a wider buffer and larger lots along New Hill Olive Chapel Road. The Planning Board heard this item at their March 11th meeting and unanimously voted to recommend approval of the rezoning with the conditions as proposed by the applicant. And I'm here to answer any questions because there were some changes from the last meeting. So.
All right, questions for staff?
What is the fee in lieu for Parks and Rec that they're contributing Do you have that on the staff report? You mentioned that the planning or the Parks and Rec Commission recommended a fee in lieu. Do you know what that fee is?
The amount,
Yeah, dollar amount.
so I can. Okay.
It's like 35. Maybe I can ask a question while we're waiting. Maybe this is more to you, Russell. Can you kind of have a narrative about this road, New Hill Olive Chapel, as far as improvements and timing of said improvements? And then I know we talked about this 751 designation that may or may not change some of that, or in the future too. So can you kind of describe this whole area in the vision of the town?
Yeah, so currently New Hill Olive Chapel Road, runs the western side of Apex, connecting US 64 down to US 1, crossing old US 1 through the historic New Hill area. It does cross the railroad tracks. A long time ago we started looking at this road, thinking about it as more of a rural character type roadway. Through more recent efforts, we're seeing it become more of an important major corridor on the western side of town, so we're trying to plan for that. Through the current efforts with the Southwest Area Study, we've identified this roadway as potentially future extension of NC 751, continuing on south of Apex. So we've looked at this area, and currently in our Advanced Apex plan, we show 4-lane sections on the north end near US 64 and down on the south end near US 1, but in the middle we've shown a 2-lane road on a 4-lane right-of-way for potential future expansion. Based on traffic increases out here, we're expecting it's probably going to be 4-lane roadway all the way through at some point in the future. The NC 751 designation is being studied now. There would not be any improvements required of the roadway to add that 751 shield as far as we know. But once it becomes designated NC 751, it opens up a new pot of money, a larger pot of money to make improvements. And considering the regional importance of this roadway, that'll help us in long-range planning in order to fund improvements to serve the traffic that we're starting to see out there.
And by that word improvements, you mean mostly widening, or?
Yes, widening, turn lanes, but really major TIP projects, because with development projects like residential developments and other smaller developments that come forward, they may install traffic signals, they may add turn lanes, but it's very difficult to get a long continuous project to widen a road to a 4-lane divided. Most of the time that takes, just like 1010 Road right now, or NC 55, it takes an NCDOT transportation improvement project. So to open up enough money at the statewide level to improve this roadway, you need that NC 751 designation.
Okay. And then the improvements, I know I saw it described in the report on Hume Olive, it's going to be some extra turn lanes.
Correct.
And then at the intersection of Old US 1, it's turn lanes and light.
Yes, so at Hume Olive Road at New Hill Olive Chapel, the Woodbury development is tasked with adding a westbound left turn lane on Hume Olive Road. Okay. And then Friendship Station PUD, as part of their development requirements, by the time they reach 400 units, they need to lengthen that left turn lane and then add also a southbound left turn lane. Based on the studies and based on this as well, we still don't anticipate that location meeting signal warrants. There's just not enough left turns out there. It still will be long delays, but it's still not meeting signal warrants. Now down at New Hill Olive Chapel Road at Old US 1, we anticipate that will meet signal warrants in the next year or two, and we have collected a fee toward a traffic signal. So the town is currently holding about $130,000 of fee to put toward a traffic signal. We were going to hold that money in anticipation of the Gracewood development further west, adding turn lanes that are required as part of their development. They've got some significant improvements down there. So the idea is we wouldn't want to put in the signal to have that modified or removed and changed. Unfortunately, they're not, it's been about a year. They've not moved forward with subdivision plans, and we're not sure when they will. So it may be that the town needs to go ahead and step forward and install the signal without turn lanes when it's warranted, which will probably be in the next year or two, and we would try and do our best to set the poles back. Of course, we're going to have to purchase right-of-way there, far enough where a future developer, can come in after the signal's installed and add those turn lanes without having to move the poles.
Okay. And the timing of widening the lanes like at Hume Olive, that can be done without any kind of study warranting it, right? It will be done when they build the houses, the 400 houses.
Yeah, correct. Turn lanes are just a matter of money and right-of-way. It's not, there's no warrants involved with that. So the town can certainly, anytime they want to go out and build turn lanes, or a developer, it's just, sometimes the right-of-way is more of a challenge for the turn lanes because you need more land for that. And if you've got homeowners or whoever on the corner where you have to purchase right-of-way, if they're not willing to sell, that may be a condemnation issue.
Okay. So, they gave a date of 2022 for some of the kind of I guess the third phase of the development. So, in your experience here in Apex, and I know we've had some issues with stoplights that we wish had gone in,
Right.
yesterday. And in your experience, does that timing line up with your expectations about that signal going in, roughly?
Yeah, I think it does roughly. But I think what the condition is trying to say that they're held to 100 units to that date. If the traffic signal's not in by, then they can clarify. If the traffic signal's not in by that date, then they would need to get the signal in before they can go beyond the 100 units. If that's the intent of the condition, then I think that helps protect the town from any additional development contributing to it. But keep in mind, we do have a lot of traffic out here, and it's going to continue to grow, so we're going to be motivated to get the signal in as soon as it's warranted.
Mm-hmm. And the study, to warrant it means that a study's done by somebody, and then I guess the town or somebody, and then that means that information goes to DOT or whoever, and then they say yes or no at that point?
Yeah, typically we'll go out and we'll review the peak hours. We'll look at the delays in the peak hours and see if it indicates it might meet warrants, and then we'll contract with someone to go out there and conduct a 12-hour count. And usually they'll collect it with video, and then process that data. It's about $1,000 to $1,200 to get that information, and then we'll do an analysis and provide that analysis to DOT to get their concurrence. Sometimes if you get close enough to warrants and they're seeing continued growth, they'll go ahead and permit it based on that. So we do have a timeline and a reminder to study that coming up when we think it might have a chance of meeting warrants.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, let me give the floor back. So I think, Liz, you were working on a response for Councilman Moyer.
So that is, it's $3,345, 49% per lot. So the total would be $505.
505.
All right, are there any other, you have the floor. Do you have any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Any other questions for staff? No? All right, let me see if there's an applicant that wishes to speak on behalf of this project. And as always, just for everybody else's sake, I know Mr. Barron knows, but we usually give the applicant up to 9 minutes to make a presentation, and then we'll also ask council if there are any questions for the applicant. Mr. Barron.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Jason Barron with Morningstar Law Group here on behalf of the applicant. Here with me tonight is Rob Tesser of David Weekly Homes. They're the proposed builder-developer of the site. Also, Jeff Roach of Peak Engineering, who has quarantined himself in the corner with some ailment that he doesn't want spread, so we appreciate that, Jeff. Also, here are several landowners who are very interested in the outcome of this case. They're the sellers, and if you folks want to raise your hand for the folks who are here in the room. There are 7 total landowners who are involved in this case who have lived on this property for a total of 184 years. So these are folks who have lived in New Hill for a long time, have seen a lot of changes over the course of time in New Hill, and anticipate there will be more coming down the road. Liz has done a great job of presenting the highlights of the case. I do want to hit a handful of items just to refresh your recollection. It is a 57-acre assemblage consisting of 153 dwellings, and I want to make a note about that. When we presented to Planning Board and they acted on the case, it was 170 dwellings. Since that time, we received feedback specifically from Councilman Moyer about overall development density and have reduced that by an additional 10% down to 153 units. Another distinction between the proposal that's before you all tonight and the one that was presented to the Planning Board board relates to use. The planning board reviewed the case with the possibility of doing single-family detached or townhome dwellings on the site. And again, Councilman Moyer expressed concerns or raised some issues associated with the possibility of townhomes on the site. And so the application has been updated to eliminate townhomes. So now it is just a single-family detached product with a total of up to 153 units. As was mentioned in the staff presentation as well as the staff report, there's essentially 3 different single-family products, a 40-foot wide, a 50-foot wide, and a 65-foot wide. The development plan contemplates a central core kind of located in this vicinity here. The rest will be, the exact location will be determined at the time of development plan, but that is where the 40-foot wide lots will be located. Those will be, it's anticipated, will be alley-fed, single-family detached dwelling in a central core with the larger lots surrounding it, kind of serving as a buffer between the more intense portion of the residential development and the adjacent residential communities. The plan or proposal before you all is consistent with the very recently adopted 2045 update that the town has. It's consistent with the recommendations of the very recently adopted Bike Apex plan that the town has adopted, and it's consistent with the development pattern that you're seeing in the New Hill area as projects have come online, and as one of the slides showed. There are developments to the west, there are developments to the south, there's development projects, Friendship Station to the east. I mean, so there's a lot that's changing, and this is entirely consistent from an overall development density. I mean, this is 2.7 dwelling units to the acre. It fits neatly with the development pattern that you're seeing out in New Hill today. And needless to say, there are utilities available to serve the site, so it's ready. In addition to being consistent with the plans that you all have adopted in terms of the long-range use of the site, it's also ready for development because municipal services have been delivered at the doorstep as a result of other projects. A handful of conditions I do want to talk about. Even though this case checks all of the boxes from a plan consistency, it is a heavily conditioned case. There was a lot of feedback that the applicant received, and we really appreciate the time, effort, and energy that was put in by folks in the community, by the council members who've reached out and have expressed comments, questions, and concerns, and I appreciate the work that's been put in by our team. We've taken those concerns very seriously, and it would have been easy to say, well, we checked the box, we meet all the plan recommendations, why can't we get our approval? But we worked very hard to try to address the concerns that we have the ability to address with this development plan and the concerns that have been raised as part of this process. Typical with a lot of cases that you all see, there's conditions related to architecture, and I won't get into those. But unique, I think, to this site, as it was mentioned, there's a planned greenway extension or trail extension through the site, and we have worked closely with the Parks and Rec department to locate that greenway extension through the site in a manner that avoids impacts to driveways. And so we have worked out a resolution that at the time of development plan, we will have an option for extending the greenway in an east-west manner through the site and terminating at the eastern boundary in an effort to provide for multimodal options ultimately when the connection is made on the other side. Additional trees, as was mentioned by the staff during their presentation, there is one additional tree being planted per lot. The plan is to have all of those on the lots themselves. If they can't fit on the lot, then those trees will be located on either the amenity space or other open areas. But there will be, at a minimum, for the 153 dwellings that are being developed on the site, there's an additional 153 trees that are being provided as part of this development that are not otherwise required by the terms of the ordinance. That's the first time I've seen that on a zoning case that I've worked on in the town, and I know my daughter, who's a sustainable development major at Appalachian State, would be very happy to see that. The solar commitment that's being made as part of this case is far and away the most significant solar commitment that I've seen as part of residential development, and I've seen a lot of them come through. There are 10 single-family homes, and it is at 4 kilowatts. That is a commitment and a condition that has been offered and is being offered tonight by the applicant. The 2 models are being delivered at 9 kilowatts. The amenity will have solar provided for it, and all of the homes will be pre-wired as well. And so that is a significant commitment. That's a conversation that we're having in every residential development that comes through the town. And we, as somebody who works with applicants, and Mr. Roach does as well, we understand where the town is coming from on that point, and we're endeavoring to address those. The last point I want to talk about is transportation. There was obviously a lot of concern associated with transportation. I want to clarify something that Mr. Dalton said with respect to the condition, Mr. Gant, that you inquired about with at US 1, Old US 1 and New Hill Olive Chapel Road. The condition as constructed essentially says we can't pull more than 100 permits until the earlier of either the signal is installed or June of 2022. And so it's the earlier of those things to occur. We're not going to, my client was concerned, our client was concerned with hijacking the development until that signal was put in. And I understand why the town would want to wait until, obviously it warrants, because DOT is not going to let the signal go in prior to that. But there are turn lanes that are tied to another development that we can't control. I guess the good news is if those improvements haven't been made as part of that development, then the traffic that would be coming from that very sizable Gracewood residential development won't be impacting that intersection to that degree. And so when our traffic analysis was done as part of this project, it baked in all of the traffic from that development as well as the improvements. But when you take those trips out, maybe those improvements aren't warranted to the degree that they might otherwise be warranted. The second thing I want to mention, and I'll see if I can toggle to it, relates to the concerns associated with the curve. And I've got an exhibit here, and I'll do my best to zoom in. So, as was mentioned in the staff report, so what the code would require for right-of-way dedication in this location or along our frontage is 55 feet, and that is being provided as part of this plan. What the code would require is a 30-foot buffer adjacent to that right-of-way dedication. What this plan is providing for is a 50-foot buffer. The plan is also providing for an additional 10 feet, variable width 10 feet in this area here, kind of the tightest portion of that curve. And the reason why we have done that, and I'll explain a little bit about the exhibit that's in front of you, there were concerns about the safety of that curve. We reached out to DOT, we and the town, and we weren't in the county actually. We weren't able to identify any accidents that occurred at this curve, but we understand there is a concern associated with safety, and so we wanted to be able to do something about that. We also understand that even though current plans at NCDOT contemplate improvement to this road much later down the road, I mean, they're talking 2040, 2060 is when they were originally thinking about it. I ran over. I didn't think that was going to happen. Long story short, we have provided for a road section that would meet NCDOT standards for the proposed 751 change that is being talked about at this time. And so the additional buffer will facilitate this road being constructed and installed in a way that won't impact individual owners. And so with that, I will conclude my remarks and open up to any questions that you all might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barron. Let me see if council has any questions for the applicant.
There was talk about clear cutting and mass grading on the larger lots. Is there going to be an effort to preserve the adult trees, the mature trees? Is that possible?
I mean, I think they would prefer to save the trees they can because it adds to the. I don't have a definitive answer for you with respect to that because we don't know it until we go to grade them. Even with the larger lots, you know, in terms of how these sites are graded in order to meet stormwater requirements and to put your streets in and all the other things that go into that, it's tough to develop a site like this and not significantly impact the trees where the homes are going to be located.
I understand. I guess what I'm asking is that every effort be made to preserve the trees, that you will do that. I know it's rather ambiguous, but...
So will we get that wordage this evening as to how you're going to address that concern, Mr. Barron?
I mean, I don't have a condition in mind. That's the first I've heard of it. I could give some thought about how we word that. I don't know if
appreciate that.
The town's attorney, but I'll give it some thought. Yeah.
I recognize that it is less, and I think the main thing that I'm after is a good faith effort.
Okay.
To try, we can put that in writing, but it's...
I'm after a little bit more than that.
Well, go ahead. I don't know how you can.
We'll see.
All right, anything else for the applicant?
Well, we're not going anywhere, so if there's more questions, you can
Okay.
drag us back up.
All right, thank you. We do have a few folks here who have signed up for the public hearing, so with the applicant's presentation complete, and you'll have an opportunity at the end. At this time, I'll open the public hearing and refer to the sign-up sheet. We do have, looks like, about 10 folks, so I'll call them in order, starting with Rob Tessar. Come on. Pardon? Do you wish to speak in the public hearing right now?
Jason has spoken on behalf.
Oh, I see. Okay, so he spoke for you?
As well as for Ryan Jackson.
All right. Oh, and Ryan Jackson? Okay. All right. And so I presume that you're in favor?
Yes, sir.
All right. Wendy Barefoot? Okay. As always, reminder, please state your name and address and watch the 3-minute count in
It'll
there.
be short. My name is Wendy Barefoot, and I'm here for my mom, Sandra Barefoot, who lives at 2237 New Hill, Olive Chapel Road. We have been there since 1976, and we never thought the day would come that we would even consider selling the property. But with our meetings with David Weekley Homes, we've been incredibly impressed. They have addressed our concerns. They have gone above and beyond our expectations, and we are very comfortable with what they have presented, and we fully support this project. We hope you will also.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Barefoot. Tim McInnes? And just for the record, Michelle Gardner and Lori McInnes will follow.
Hi, my name is Tim McInnes, 8836 Twin Ponds Lane. Just looking at the different forms and everything that they've laid out there, it's like I've been living in New Hill since 2007. And like Wendy said, I didn't think I'd ever be leaving there. But what they proposed as far as their building site and stuff, in my opinion, looks a lot better than a lot of the other stuff that has been already started. And so I would say that David Weekley Homes is probably setting a standard for other builders to have to follow and to meet. And so I'm in favor of their project.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McInnes. Michelle Gardner?
Good evening. My name is Michelle Gardner, and I am at 8848 Twin Ponds Lane in New Hill. We settled there in 1987, and thank you all for your time. And please say hey to Janice for me.
Oh, sure.
And appreciate y'all being here. As you know, I support the project, and I think it'll be quite an asset to New Hill. So again, I fully support the project, and thank you all for being here and your time and dedication that y'all have to the town of Apex. And that's about it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lori McInnes? Oh, and I see that so you're from the same house, so that's fine. Gotcha. Thank you very much. Terry Mahaffey, followed by Owen Wynn.
I'm Terry Mahaffey at 109 Terracina Court here in Apex. Thank you, Council and Mayor. I want to start by getting a few things straight. I don't oppose development in general. I don't oppose development in this particular area, New Hill, and I don't even oppose development in this specific lot. I am, however, opposed to this specific plan at this specific time. Ultimately, this does come down to conservationism for me. It's about us as a town being good stewards of the land we're entrusted with sovereignty over. Recognizing the paths we walk down here every other week are one way. Once something's high density, it's high density forever. Something can't be unclear cut. I've made my specific objections concerning the road, the density, the environmental impact, the abuse of the RCA rules, et cetera, pretty clear. I'm confident you've all heard me, so I'll skip going over them again. The council has often responded to complaints about overdevelopment by pointing out, quite correctly, that many of the projects people see were approved by past councils before you guys were seated. But as the months and years go on, time's kind of running short on that explanation. The buck stops with you guys now. Here tonight, you have before you another one of these projects containing all of the qualities everyone complains about, with little to no attempt made to address the major concerns constituents have raised. Unless you draw the line in the sand, projects like this are going to keep coming. It doesn't have to be like this. Just last meeting, we saw development which went above and beyond. Multiple neighborhood meetings were held. Significant changes were made based on the neighborhood feedback. The project then came to council with every conceivable problem I could think of already addressed. This was a developer who cared deeply about the community he was impacting in the town he was building in. Every project can be like this. Take a moment to contrast that project with what your experience has been working through this proposal. Which would you rather see? More importantly, what can you do here today to make sure that happens? I see the developers made some changes in the proposal tonight. To finish up, I just want to give my thoughts on some of the things that I've heard. Concerning the change in single-family units from townhomes to high-density, at the high-density core from townhomes to single-family units, I think that's a step in the right direction, but ultimately this project is still a high-density development. Calling it low-density, I think, is kind of comical. All units are pre-wired for solar. This is a dirt cheap feature. It involves just running a wire to the roof. That really should be standard in 2019. I see 10 units are now have 4 kilowatt solar systems installed. I want to point out that a 3 kilowatt system is half the normal size solar installation in the United States. And 10 units represents 6% of the units in development, and this is a token effort at best. Also, 2 model units have, I think it's worded as the lesser of 9 kilowatts or whatever is necessary, so I read that as perhaps closer to the 6 kilowatt average. Again, 2 units is kind of a token effort. If we're doing solar, I'd like to really do solar, a higher percentage. Concerning the buffer, the developer has offered an additional 10-foot variable width along the northwestern edge. In my estimation, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I think closer to 50 feet might be needed to really widen that road and straighten it and still keep a buffer for the existing townhomes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mahaffey.
Thank you.
Owen Wynn, and followed by Reinald Stevenson.
Hi, I'm Owen Wynn. I live at 2217 New Hill, Olive Chapel Road. Obviously, I'm one of the property owners who's selling this property. I'm not going to beat you with a lot of points you've already heard. I just want to give you a little perspective that I have that you might not have. How it affects us property owners. I've lived there 22 years next month, and I raised 4 of my kids there. My granddaughter was 15, never lived anywhere but there until last week, and so it's very important to me. So why am I selling it? Well, because I no longer have 4 kids living there. I'm not working. I'm 69 years old, and don't tell her I told you this, but my wife is 76. So it's time for us to move on. It's time for us to downsize. And David Weekly Homes, who I agree is very reputable people and will do a good job, have offered me money that will allow me to move on. If this doesn't pass today, I'm still going to have to sell. But I'll sell for less, and I have to do major repairs, and I have to pay a realtor. So it'll make a major difference for me. And the difference being, if something were to happen to me or my wife and we lose one pension, it won't be as easy for us to get by as it will if we sell to David Weekly Homes. So what I'm trying to tell you is this affects not only me, but each of these homeowners in different ways, but some ways similar, and it affects the quality of our life for the rest of our life. So please consider that when you vote. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wynn. Reinald Stevenson?
Mr. Barron's covered my comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Christina Darden? All right. Thank you. All right, having reached the end of the list, I'll close the public hearing, referring the matter back to council for consideration. Before I do that, though, as I typically do, I'll ask the applicant if he heard anything during public hearing that he would like to respond to.
Nothing related to the public hearing, but do have draft language of a condition with respect to tree save. And what we have come up with in short order is with respect to any lots that are 65 feet wide or greater, which is the largest lots in this development. The developer shall use a good faith effort to preserve existing trees.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, let me see if council has any discussion leading to a possible motion or further questions if there's something still going on.
My biggest concern with this one is still traffic related, still related to the curve. You know, the drawing that you've shown us, the plans that you've shown us look great, but that's not going to be done. It's not anywhere near. There's not a date on it. We don't know when that's going to happen. So that's my biggest concern with this. I mean, we're adding 1,600 trips from this development to that area. We've got, let's see, 9 developments in that area that are still not built out. We're going to be adding a lot of traffic out there on a 2-lane road with curves like that. So.
Okay.
It's just not.
That's not a question to the applicant?
No, not at all, just my
Okay.
statements, just.
All right. Any other discussion or comments?
I guess I'd like to know from staff, and I apologize for coming up with this so late, but how many houses are in Jordan Manor and how many houses are in Woodbury? You have that. I know that's difficult. Rough numbers.
I have the density calculations. I can get you the specific number of units. Do you want the density or the number of units?
I like the number of units, I think, but if that's too difficult, I didn't mean to throw this at you, it just came up to mind. And really, in part because of trying to figure out what the partial impact of this development will be versus what's already out there and going in. You know, if Jordan Manor has 300 homes, I forget what they are. Woodbury, I think, has 300 or 400 homes. Then in reality, what we're talking about is a relatively small percentage of additional homes out there by a quality builder. And that's what I want to find out.
Okay. I think we'll wait and get an answer.
So Jordan Manors is 240. Jordan Point is 440. And we're looking up Woodbury.
Maybe while that's going on, Russell, would you mind speaking to the curve that's drawn there and what your consultation, if any, with the developer and engineers, and your thoughts on that angle? Would it meet speed limit requirements? Would it meet any kind of other requirements that may be here now or possibly in the future?
Yeah, we think what they provided will do that. The one concern, of course, is the buffer will be reduced when the road gets shifted. But we think for a 4-lane divided road, looking at shifting that roughly 50 feet or so east, a 50-foot buffer plus additional buffers they've shown would accommodate that realignment for 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. So
And it's different than something like Groves where it's going to be right up kind of way too close to there.
It will be different. Well, as far as the Groves having their front door on the 4-lane divided road, it'll be very different than that because there'll be backyards at that point where the road is behind them. So yeah, it's definitely a different situation.
But you consider this accounting for this much shifting not to be equivalent to what they've experienced as far as expectations about how close the road would be versus when they bought.
When Groves was the Groves, you mean the townhomes that front on Center Street?
Well, the other side too, both sides of the road.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, over there, it's not actually. I mean, I guess it's more impact on the ones that front the road because, because it's their front door. And I had concerns about that project when it was originally proposed anyway, based on that. But I mean, I think they're accounting for it as best they can. If you're okay with certainly losing some buffer when the roadway gets realigned. We don't have a design for the road, but based on our initial look, we thought that based on that right-of-way dedication, based on the 50-foot buffer, it would have room to accommodate that shift in alignment, so.
And without necessarily, was this alignment going to be good to go, or would the properties to the north have to be affected as well in this kind of arrangement?
No, we believe it'll tie in on the north end of this project pretty closely. I mean, until you get into a full road design with the grading and everything else involved, you don't really know for sure. But just based on a preliminary look, if you have to take some additional room, on these projects, by the time it's designed, that's just one of the things you deal with. But, I mean, at least in this case, I would say it's a good thing the developer at least is aware of the issue. They're planning for it, I think, as best they can, not having a final design.
All right, let me give the floor back. I think there was
Could I
still,
ask-
hang on, there was still a pending question. So Brett jumped in while they were looking out one more number, so let me see if they were able to find Woodbury.
Yeah, Woodbury is 311 single family with 89 townhomes for a total of 400.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so before we keep going, so that was 240, 440, and 400 generally for those three? Okay. Thank you. I'll go back to you, Councilman Jensen. You have the floor.
Okay, well, the sum total is 1,080 homes, and then we're going to be adding some to it. So I think the impact on this curve is percentage-wise, it's not, in terms of traffic, it's not that high. That's why I asked about that. I would like to ask Russell one more question, because they mentioned signage. They mentioned signage. Will you be getting involved with signage? I noted out there that there's like 2 arrows. If you're coming up in one direction, you can kind of see them. They're not very good. Would they be improved to something like LED lit arrows for at night? Or how would you handle that?
Short answer, probably no. Unless it's a crash problem out there, DOT's probably not going to propose to upgrade the sign to like an LED type. Typically, you would see those in an unusual situation, like an interchange ramp where you've had some trucks flip over. But it'd be the high-vis signs, probably what's already out there. I mean, we can take another look at them if you'd like us to, but my understanding is there are curve warning signs out there. They should be retroreflective, high visibility that meet all the standards that are required for a location like that.
Yeah, I would like you to look at it.
Okay.
But they'll be building the side path there, so it will potentially clear out a little bit of the curve obstructions with the trees there, right?
It will help, yeah. With certainly they've got to add their turn lanes out there with the wider road, with the path. I mean, there's going to be clearing out in the frontage, so it's definitely going to be a better situation than it is now. And of course, with the design, we'll make sure that sight distance is achieved to the correct design speed. So there's not going to be an issue with sight distance with the plan that's proposed.
Okay. Anything else from council? Questions or comments?
Comment, but not for Russell.
Okay. Yep. Okay. But I think we're ready to move on if you want the floor.
Okay. So, so in front of me tonight is an annexation and rezoning. And the decision I make has no bearing on whether the builder is quality or not. I believe this builder is quality. But I want to also say that I appreciate the folks who are the landowners and, their play and their engagement. And I also appreciate the folks who feel most impacted. That this is the way policymaking is supposed to be, where people on both sides of an issue get to engage with their elected officials and amongst themselves. So for me, in listening and hearing all the opinions and positions that are voiced, email and in person, and experience of being in that area, and then with the conditions that were offered for some of the conditions or some of the requests by some, I remain today still unsupportive of this project at this time in this location. And much of my concern is on things that are out of your control and my control. So I cannot support this project in that location at this time.
I guess I'd like to go. First, thank you to everybody who's reached out to me to want to sit for a cup of coffee and discuss this project, and try to make changes to make this better for Apex. Because at the end of the day, it's all about making these developments good for Apex. We reduced the number of units by 10%. We removed the townhouses. You know, as a town, we spent, I think it was $176,000 on creating a plan for what we want our town to look like. And I think it's our obligation when people bring projects forward and they meet that plan, that we honor what we set out as a map for the future of our town. I mean, here's a group of landowners, and we see this a lot, that have lived in Apex probably longer than everybody sitting up here. And their life is changing and they're ready to move on, and we put a map out there. They honored it. We have a quality builder here which is made a lot of amendments and changes to their proposal to make it what we want to see, and I'm in support of this. I think this is a quality project, and I look forward to seeing hopefully what it looks like and what value it brings to the town of Apex.
Any other thoughts? Or
maybe I'll go. So when I ran for election, I talked a lot about thoughtful growth, and it was maybe ill-defined in my head at the time. Also walkability, and with those two things in mind, I have kind of become a little bit weary of the growth out in New Hill with the neighborhoods that are already going in. And when it was presented to the planning board, I was like, yeah, this thing's gonna be done, because I had issues with the traffic, with the curve. The greenway was going to cross some driveways, and I thought, or the side path was going to be crossing driveways, and I was like, that's kind of a glorified sidewalk, and greenways are really important to me for the walkability. And I wasn't going to even engage, but then I was like, I don't want this thing to pass with the side path being that way and the curve being that way. So I decided to engage with you guys, and I think it's accounting for that straightening of that curve, doing a timeline with the improvements with the traffic, and with the side path being a little more like a greenway when it's not greenway proper. It becomes walkable, and I think the timing of those traffic improvements are in my opinion, thoughtful growth. And so I'm in support of the project, and I think that I wish some of the previous ones that have been out there in that area and along Olive Chapel, some of the developments have been these kind of buffers, and the traffic improvements have been timed like this, where it wasn't just a free-for-all like I consider what happened in the past 5 years or 10 years, however long it's been. But that's not what this is, and so that's why I plan to vote for it tonight.
All right, well, I think everybody's had a voice. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion further?
Well,
Oh, sorry, that's right. Thank you very much. Yes, the motion is both for annexation and for rezoning.
Correct.
Okay.
And the
second.
difference in the land, correct, the difference in land is to account for the development versus the road area, right? Okay. Because there's a difference in land amounts in the two things.
Okay, so
that was unusual. Just make sure that was what he said.
Yeah,
That's correct, right?
And I want to make sure also that we're including all of the conditions offered, not just by staff, but also offered by the applicant, including the change from 3 kilowatts to 4, right?
And
And
including
the
good faith effort.
good faith effort to preserve trees. Do you accept all of that as part of your motion?
Yes.
All right. And as the second?
Right, and it's correct to annex a little bit more land or a little less land than the development is zoning for, right? I asked you that, and I was confused by it, and I'm not sure that's the case.
I don't know what you're referring to.
It's a little different acreage between the two. 1 and 2 are different acreage.
Public hearing 01 and 02.
And that was correct. That was on purpose, right? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Okay, all right. So, but just make sure, I didn't hear your answer. Are you okay with all those changes for your second?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion and a second with all those conditions. Discussion on the motion?
Just real briefly, they're at 2.7 units per acre. I'd like to see lower density on these, but if we're going to see lower density, we have to adjust the playing field through the UDO. I think it would be unfair to tell somebody you're below the maximum number of units we want to see and then turn them down. And the other part of this is, if we adjust our UDO possibly so that other ones might have a lower density, that comes back into play, frankly, for the price of the property. I don't want to take a bunch of money away from the property owners, but these developers look at the property and they pay a certain amount of money knowing exactly how they're going to develop it. So from the economic standpoint, I'm just saying, to be fair to everybody, if we're going to want a lower density, we need to adjust the UDO.
All right. All right, not hearing
Mayor, I'd
oh.
like to say one more thing that I left out, actually.
Okay.
You know, this developer is gonna deposit $505,000 into our Parks and Rec fee that, myself included, I love going to the parks and walking around all the trails. That's paid for by development in this town. And I think we also have to decide long-term how much solar we want and how much large trees we want, because I don't think the two go together. We got to be mindful of kind of what do we want, right? One or the other. I don't think they go together, but that's it. I meant to say that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'd like to address the solar situation because certainly Councilman, Mayor and I are on opposite.
Well,
I just want to
may
say.
Okay.
I just want to say there is going to be some mass grading, tree cutting in the central core. That's where the solar would go. Now, if they can save trees on the outside, then there won't be any solar. And that is why, instead of asking for 30 or 50% solar, I asked them for a small amount to get them going. And that's the reason. It's can they do it? That's the question. I think they can, to a percentage.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Last call for comments on the motion for approval with the conditions. All right. All in favor of the motion of approval with all the conditions indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
Okay. I heard 3 in favor, 2 against. Does anyone disagree? All right. That passes 3-2. And that was for both public hearings 1 and 2. We now move into the public hearing number 3, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing. Since I see several people standing, I'll give just a moment for the room to clear a little bit. But in the process, I will find my opening statement for quasi-judicial public hearings.
Okay. Hopefully. Well, do you
It should probably 25 minutes.
Yeah.
25 minutes.
Are you good, Beth?
I think I am.
Okay.
While you're doing that, can we just check?
Okay, sure.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I don't expect opposition, so I think 25 minutes just to get through the motions. And Mr. Barron, if you could grab the door, that'd be fantastic. Thank you, sir. All right, we now move to public hearing number 3. This is our quasi-judicial hearing, and I have a formal opening statement, which I will read as I do in front of all quasi-judicial public hearings. The town council normally functions in a legislative capacity. Special use permit hearings are quasi-judicial, which means that the council essentially acts as a court of law. The burden is upon the applicant for the special use permit to put on evidence to show that they meet the criteria found in the town's Unified Development Code, or UDO, which I guess would be ordinance. We'll have to change that. Anyone opposed to the application must put on evidence of a similar kind, showing the criteria have not been met. Testimony must be given under oath. All testimony and evidence provided to the council must be competent, material, and substantial. Pursuant to the North Carolina Journal statutes, competent evidence does not include opinion testimony of lay witnesses on certain matters. Hearsay evidence will not be admitted. The parties have the right to cross-examine witnesses and to present rebuttal evidence. The town council will apply the criteria contained in the UDO and make its decision based on the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing. The Town Council will now take up the case of the special use permit 19 SUP 01 for Heritage Leadership Academy located at 3000 Lufkin Road. So this time I'll begin by opening the public hearing and refer all people who intend to speak tonight or who will be either presenting testimony to come up towards the town clerk's corner to be sworn in. And while they are doing that, I'll ask council members to make sure you found your checklist, which should be something like this with little boxes on the side.
You swear that testimony you're about to give to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I'll help you out.
All right, thank you. Just before we begin, could I see an identification of the applicant or the counsel that's representing the applicant? Just so I know who it is. Mr. Stam, okay. And you have some supporters or some testimony to present tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay.
At least one witness, but we have 3 others in case you have questions. I'll identify them.
All right.
Can we do that now or?
No, in just a little bit. And are there any opponents? Is there opposition counsel presenting tonight? All right. That should help move things along without opposition. So at this time, I would like to ask council members, including myself, to describe any communications they may have had related to this case as a quasi-judicial public hearing. Have you had communications? Do you have any relational or financial conflicts? And do you believe you can impartially hear tonight's case and make a decision? As usual, I'll start with Councilman Jensen.
All 3, I believe I can make the decision tonight.
Okay. I'll take that as a no conflict. I'll take that as a no conflict statement.
That's right.
Okay. No communication, no financial or relational conflict of interest, and I can judge fairly.
I have no conflicts, I haven't had no communications, and I can be impartial.
All right, thank you. I also have had no communications. I have no conflicts, and if needed, I can help make a decision in the case impartially.
I have no conflicts of interest. I have known the applicant since probably high school. We grew up playing sports together. We've lost touch for quite some time. I can make a decision on this impartially.
All right, thank you.
I've had no communications, and I can make an impartial decision.
All right, thank you. Council members, this is another question to you. If you have viewed the site, please indicate. And to be clear, not just any time in your life, but knowing that this was coming up, have you gone specifically to go view the site?
No.
All right, let the record show everyone said no or indicated no answer.
I go to church there, but.
Oh, do it.
Okay.
But not for this, I did not go to look at it for this site.
All right.
Close your eyes walking in.
Yeah.
Right. And all we're looking for is a simple statement, so that's fine. It doesn't disqualify you. So at this time, I'll refer to staff for opening statements. Thank you for your patience as we check the lines off.
I have no opening statement.
Oh, that was easy. All right. Mr. Applicant, Mr. Stam, this is your opening statement. Yes, sir.
Yes, this is,
Please come up to the microphone so we can all hear you.
Paul Stam for the applicant, and by the way, I'm in the first house in Apex that's passive solar. And I think the mayor lived as a child growing up in the second passive solar house in Apex.
True.
Is that right? Okay. We'll have testifying Reinald Stevenson, who's a traffic engineer, and because traffic is the only issue that I've seen identified in the papers. We'll also have the administrator, the head of school, and an engineer in case you have further questions. One issue here, this is to get a special use permit to have a school, a public or private school co-located inside a church building. There's one, I'll say ambiguity in the papers. It refers to this as a private charter school. This is a private school. It's not a charter school. Those are public. And I think that was just because the DOT formula for how you type in categories didn't have the right category, but it's a private school. But if you grant this special use permit, then it could be used for either one because it's public or private. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your opening statement. At this time, town staff presenting evidence.
Just to present my credentials, my name is Shelley Mayo. I've been a planner for the town of Apex for 5 years, and I have a master's in city and regional planning. And I always forget to do that, so I have a sticky note. The special use permit that's before you is for Heritage Leadership Academy. The proposal is located at the existing Summit Church site, which is kind of on the southeasterly side of our jurisdiction. It's located on Lufkin Road, just south of the interchange between Lufkin and US 1. Over here is where Lufkin intersects with 1010, and then it goes all the way down. Kind of down here off the corner is Lufkin Middle School, just to give you an idea. This map is not up to date, and I apologize for that because we recently rezoned this site to be all B1CZ. This one still shows the LI Plan Commercial, so it's all one zoning now. We did that at the last meeting. 2045 land use map does designate this as commercial services, and this proposal is consistent with that request. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on December 20th, 2018. That meeting report is attached to your staff report. Just to give you a little background, on April 5th, 2016, TRC, the town's technical review committee, approved a minor site plan for Summit Church. In July 2017, construction on the church was completed. On March 19th, 2019, Town Council approved a rezoning petition 19CZ01 to rezone the property to neighborhood business conditional zoning, and the proposed use was added to the list of permitted uses at that time. The applicant is requesting that the use school, public, or private be added to this or be approved. The applicant's proposing a private school that would operate between the hours of 8:45 a.m. and 3:45 p.m. with a maximum of 168 students attending the school. The school is proposing to utilize the existing facility and does not propose any new construction whatsoever. As a part of the application review, the applicant was required to provide a TIA to determine whether or not there were any additional road improvements necessary, considering the additional traffic generated by the school. For the proposed 168 students, approximately 954 linear feet of internal stacking was required. This is based on the TIA and an analysis that was done in that. By weaving that stacking lane through the parking lot, as shown here in red, the site is actually able to provide approximately 1,580 linear feet of stacking. It's almost double. Based on the TIA, there was no need to install any further road improvements at either site driveway. The proposed Heritage Leadership Academy special use permit is consistent with the Apex Transportation Plan. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, so that was your presentation. So at this time, this is cross-examination of staff testimony. Is there any from council?
I'll start just a little bit. We're talking about a public school or a private school, and the applicant intends to do a private school.
Correct.
I'm good with the private school. I have a little trouble with a public school in a church setting, quite frankly.
Well, if I could pause you for a second. This is an opportunity to cross-examine the testimony.
Okay. All right.
Not necessarily expressing opinions, but
Can
I understand.
I was trying to lead up to a question.
All right.
Okay, can we strike the public school part of this? That was what I was trying to lead up to.
Okay.
The way that the use is listed in the UDO is school, public, or private. We do not have a separate designation for that. I am not aware of any instance where we have restricted whether a particular property can be either public or private. I would hesitate to say that to keep things legally fair and to follow some of the legal guidance that I've heard before, that would actually be at the very least frowned upon, if not possibly unenforceable. But I am not a legal expert. I can only go based on previous examples that I'm aware of, so I don't think that we ever have. We do have several locations around town, however, where this exact same type of special use permit is permitted within a church. Heritage Leadership Academy currently occupies space at Hope Community Church. We approved a special use permit for a charter school to locate at New Horizons Church. They ended up not needing to. They were looking for a temporary facility because their particular building was taking longer to build than they thought. They ended up not needing to locate there, but that was a charter school, not a private school. And I think there's one other example, but I can't think of it at the moment.
So if I may, and I'm not an expert on state education issues, but I believe that under the general statutes is that public charter schools can operate amongst religious or faith organizations. And so if that's the case, that's state law, and then we can't change anything really. And that's my understanding. And
I don't know
Mr. Stam know more about that than I do, but I think that's my understanding.
All right. Well, we'll not be able to consider that evidence, but.
Right, I'm not
we'll
an education expert, but I'm just saying, I think that's my understanding.
Right, okay.
But it is.
Can you help me yeah,
I'm ready for another question.
Yeah. Can you help me understand how the 54 linear feet was calculated and what goes into that?
Essentially, it starts from the driveway, and Russell may be a better person to ask this question of, but I can give you my understanding.
I don't mean how much they can calculate there. I'm saying the one that they're going to use.
I cannot, actually.
Okay.
I don't know how those particular calculations are come to. That would be better directed to one of the transportation engineers in the room once we get to those.
But there are, I'm asking, but
there are
standards.
preset standards that were applied. MUTC something is the acronym for it, and it's something like municipal. I wrote it out and I don't remember it at the moment. I apologize. But it is a set standard criteria that's used consistently, in my experience, with all of the schools that I've done. And I have actually presented 5 or 6 different schools to the town council over the last 5 years. And so it's a set of standards that's used consistently throughout all of those.
We may have an opportunity to ask that again.
Yeah.
During the applicant's portion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other cross-examination questions for staff evidence from council? Okay, not hearing any, I'll ask the applicant if he wishes to cross-examine the evidence presented.
I would like to ask Ms. Mayo a few questions, but I hesitate to call this cross-examination.
Sure.
Ms. Mayo, in your opinion, is this co-location of a school inside a church compatible with the character of surrounding land uses?
Yes, sir.
Have you looked at the supplemental standards of the UDO? Is it compatible with any supplemental standards?
I have, sir. Yes, it is.
Do you have an opinion whether there's any significant adverse impact on any surrounding lands?
I do not believe there is.
Are there any environmental impacts of locating a relatively small school inside of a large church?
None that I'm aware of.
Is there any impact significant on public facilities, water, sewer?
No, sir.
And finally, as far as you know, in your opinion, does it comply with the other applicable provisions of the UDA with respect to layout, general development, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir.
All right.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stam. You didn't in any way sound cross during that examination.
If I may, I forgot one piece of information that I meant to include in my presentation.
All right. Yes, I think that will be fine.
I wanted to point out that the hours of this particular school have been offset to 8:45 as a start time and 3:45 p.m. as the end time. That's partly in order to offset the timeframes from Lufkin Middle School to prevent any traffic conflicts there. Lufkin Middle School opens at 8:15 and ends at 3 o'clock, so there's a 30-minute offset in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon.
All right, and is that part of the condition of the permit?
That is a condition of the permit, yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Before you sit down, just let me see if anybody has a question specifically about hours of operation. Or Mr. Stam. Do you have a question about?
Real quick, so if the school time changes, would they change as well, or is it written in a way that is?
It's written as a specific concrete set of times.
Okay.
But the Lufkin Middle follows the regular bell schedule for a middle school in Wake County.
And that is
And
typically not changed very much over time?
It's rare, to my understanding.
Okay.
My understanding is it is rare, but it has happened.
Correct.
So is there any way we could change that to a 30-minute offset?
The applicant would have to agree to that. If the applicant is willing to agree to change the
Say that for the
phrasing of the
applicant, yeah.
conditions, then that would be something we could do.
All right. Mr. Stam, did you have any questions on the new testimony on the hours of operation?
The applicant would be willing to make that a part of the
Okay.
condition, that be a 30-minute offset.
All right.
If Lufkin Road changes.
All right.
May I recommend that we phrase it as a minimum of 30-minute offset from the Lufkin Road
Sure,
School?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that would be acceptable.
Thank you.
All right, I think we've gotten to the end of your testimony, so thank you for staff's testimony, and we'll now turn to the applicant to present evidence for this case.
We call Ronald Stevenson.
All right.
Stevenson, would you just identify yourself and your area of expertise and what you did with respect to analyzing the situation?
Yeah, sure. Ronald Stevenson with Ramey Kemp and Associates, 5808 Farrington Place in Raleigh. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. Got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from NC State in civil engineering with a focus in transportation, and prepared probably hundreds of traffic impact studies similar to this one. And we did prepare a traffic impact analysis for this project. One of the things I will hit on is it follows the guidelines for calculations of the NCDOT establishes in their municipal and school transportation assistance group. MSTA is what we all generally call it. And they have a group of folks who go out and study schools, and one of the things they do is count the cars, count buses, count or measure the stacking that occurs at these schools, and they sort of build this database of all kinds of information for various types of schools. And then, they do some statistical analysis on it, and it comes up with sort of if you will, sort of an average stacking length per student, for a particular type of school. And so that's what we used in this particular case, and we use that on all school studies that we do in the state. That is how we arrived at the 954 that was minimum required by NCDOT. And we, as you've heard and seen, we do meet that stacking requirement. There is a left turn lane on Lufkin Road at the school entrance, so there's adequate traffic capacity for the school traffic. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do you have any other evidence from Mr.
Questions?
Okay, all right. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Stevenson as a traffic expert? All right, not hearing any. As staff, I guess you don't have any questions for Mr. Stevenson, do you? No, sir. Okay. All right, next witness.
I would tender 3 other witnesses if they've been sworn, if you have questions. Ms. Georgina Weiss is the head of school. Mr. Carl Cheney is an administrator, and David Arnold's an engineer whose kids attend, and he did all this, and so they're available if you have questions.
All right, thank you. So even though they haven't presented any evidence themselves, does anybody have any questions for these folks as the people who wish to operate the school? Okay, not hearing any. Thank you, and let's see. So, staff, are there any rebuttal statements?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Applicant, do you have any rebuttal statements? You'll have a closing argument in just a moment. All right, thank you. I knew why you, I can feel it. All right, so this time, staff, do you have a closing argument? All right, Mr. Stam, this is your closing argument time.
I hope you'll pass it. And this is co-locating one use within another that are essentially operated at different times of the week is great for the environment, great for efficiency, for everybody. Win-win-win, ought to be done all the time. Thank you. I would like to address not a factual question, but a legal question that Councilman Jensen and, was raised about public charter schools inside churches. These folks are intended to operate it privately. My understanding of the law is that public charter schools can be located within a church, but not many of them choose to do that because they're required to remove so many church-type things that it's just not very practical. But it is legal. Hope that's all.
Thank you. And as an attorney, we can take that as evidence, so thank you very much. All right, with the closing.
Thanks a lot, Nance.
Are you an attorney?
No, remember I said I know I'm not an expert.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Sorry. No. I actually didn't mean that anyway, other than we take testimony and evidence from experts in their field, right?
That's
Traffic and planning and attorneys. I hope I didn't step on a toe.
I'm just confirming you were right.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's nice. That's nice.
Sorry.
All right, no, that's right. At this time, council members, I'd like to remind you, you have your checklist here. Hopefully you've been looking at it while the presentation was made. I think Mr. Stam went through some of this in fairly straight order when he was talking to staff. So at this time, I will close the public hearing and refer the matter to council for deliberation over finding of facts. I'll give you a minute just to look at this, and if you have a question, now's a good time to offer it up.
And do we have the wording on the 30-minute thing somewhere, like, written down?
Let me ask staff.
Diane has a slightly different version, but it means exactly the same thing written down. The school opening and closing time shall be offset from those of Lufkin Road Middle School by a minimum of 30 minutes. I think her phrasing says the school opening and closing time shall be offset by a minimum of 30 minutes from the Lufkin Road Middle School bell schedule.
Okay.
But
all right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I do have a question about that. Is it school, do we need to clarify that to like school, like starting bell and ending bell? Is opening and closing reference like closing the doors and opening the doors, or like when students start and
if we go with Diane's version, then it'll reference the bell schedule itself, and that generally, my understanding is the first bell is generally when the first class comes in, and everybody has to be in place.
But not like shutting business down, ending business, closing business, I guess was what I was worried about. Open and close, or start and finish.
We can use the phrasing that Diane had about the bell schedule, and that'll
So
address that.
That'll allow them to, like, staff to remain there and complete their day after the students leave. Okay.
All right. Any other deliberation from council? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the special use permit with the conditional language that was added related to the bell schedule.
And there's no language additional about the public versus private school thing?
No.
Right?
You can't,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Discussion on the motion to approve? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much for coming out, everybody. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. We do have other things on the agenda. Would the council like a brief recess before we continue?
Please.
All right, we'll take a brief recess, and, well, I'll just leave the definition of brief up to you. Thanks. But we will resume.